Hello, my name is Stephen Redman and welcome to another episode of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we talk about everything to do with theology books, books that might be on a reading list for a seminary course, for a bachelor's or master's degree, or perhaps books that you've just seen advertised, or perhaps in your own pastor's library or your vicar's study and you're interested. So if you like what I have to say today, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It does help the algorithm. And if you subscribe and click on the bell, then you'll be notified as soon as we launch another episode. With 10 to 15 minutes a week, it shouldn't be too onerous for you. Today, I want to introduce a series of books which is getting to be quite large, but I only discovered it maybe 3 years ago. I just collected 4 of them because A, that they're not too cheap, and B, they are very distinctive in the subjects covered. And so there were 4 particular ones that I was very interested in reading, which I bought and I've read and I like. And so I thought I ought to just mention them to you. When I was at Bible college doing my master's degree, I was told about Brill, which is a publishing house. Maybe we should call them brill.com these days. And particularly, I was drawn to a couple of journals that they produced, which I'm still subscribing to, even though that's over a decade ago. And the thing about Brill is that I didn't know just how many books they published. I was aware of the journals that they published, but I was very encouraged when a friend of mine said, "Hey Steve, my first book's being published." And I said, "Oh, you must let me know, I want to buy a copy." So he sent me a link and I bought this book. This book is written by John Usher, who is a learned friend of mine, and he has written the definitive history of Cecil Polhill, which the book is called Cecil Polhill, Missionary Gentleman and Revivalist, Volume 1, 1860 to 1914. And I am told that Volume 2 is not too far away. Cecil Polhill was somebody that I had never heard of in my life. But when I read this, I'd had some things told me over the years by John, who has been studying him for years. But when I read this, I found this man to be a riveting person to read about. And what a great mission-hearted man who has had a massive impact on world evangelization, if you trace it back. Now, this book, which, like I say, is written by a friend, is about 290 odd pages long. Like all of the books in this series, it's brilliant white paper, very dark font, very easy to read on the page. Layout has been considered and thought about, and it really is quite excellent. Footnotes, there's plenty of room for them, and also an excellent bibliography at the back of the book. This has everything that you would expect from a good book. My friend sent me a link for a discount when I bought this. And so this was the first book I bought in the series. But I discovered that if you tick the boxes and let me know of promotional stuff and what have you that you have, that maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year later, they will email you and they'll send you a voucher. And the truth is, I got my next 2 from one of these offers where they sent me a voucher, which I'm pretty certain was 30% off. And of course, if anybody's going to send you a voucher for 20, 25, 30% off a book, well, that's just brilliant, isn't it? Particularly when the book is not that inexpensive. This series of books can typically be £40, £50 a volume. They're not inexpensive by any means. They are called the Global Pentecostal and Charismatic Studies. And if you're not a charismatic or a Pentecostal, don't be put off. It's just a name. And these are edited by William Kay, the great British theology professor, and Mark Cartledge from Regent University. And they steer these through production. And really, I have to say, these are absolutely excellent. what I sort of get the feeling like I'm reading with one of these is I feel like I'm reading a thesis that someone has rejigged for popular reading, although these are still quite academic. These are not easy reading for the beach, unless you're so inclined. So that was the first one I encountered. With my next voucher, I bought the following two, which were easy to choose because one of them, I'd been price watching it for years. I'd had it listed on my Amazon wish list, and it was about £65. Oh, good grief, I just can't envisage paying £65 for a book like that. But this book is called Pentecostal Theology and Ecumenical Theology, and it's written by Peter Hocken. And Peter Hocken, I had the delight to meet maybe about 12, 15 years ago. He was a Roman Catholic who at the time was a chaplain to the Pope, and he had this enormous history of working ecumenically, mainly with Pentecostals, but broadly across the Protestant church. And I have always got something from his books. I've got most of his books, and they really are always a good read. And particularly if you think ecumenically yourself, and if you are used to mixing in ecumenical circles with people who are solidly, soundly Christian people, but may have a very different tradition of worship. And I found this to be absolutely excellent. And I am so pleased I bought it with a 30% off voucher, because I think I paid 40 something and it was 60 something on Amazon. So it was a lot of a discount, and it's a really, really good book. The other one I bought on that same voucher was W.F.P. Burton, 1886 to 1971, A Pentecostal Pioneer's Missional Vision for the Congo. And this is by David Emmett. Now, I was brought up in churches where we were always talking about the great missionary W.F.P. Burton in the Congo. We would always be getting a visitor maybe every 2 years from the Congo, someone who was on furlough, who would come and tell us about the great number of people who were being born again, who were becoming Christians in the Congo, and some of the amazing miracles that they had seen over there. And I remember when I was 14 years old, when you're 14 years old as a young man, certainly in those days, crying in public would be unheard of. And I would certainly have not engaged in that, except this particular day we had this wonderful missionary, a man called Joe Robinson, who was part of the Congo mission, and he was telling us about some of the amazing things that he'd seen and heard. And I remember him telling me about this desperate woman who had an amazing healing when they prayed for her, and how she brought her whole family to Christ, and the village was transformed. And I remember crying in public. I'd maybe done it when I was 7, but not when I was 14. And a friend of mine asked me, I don't know, sometime last year, Stephen, tell me about the time you received your calling into ministry. And I don't know that anyone had asked me that for a long while. And I just thought about this day, and I thought, I think that was the day I decided I wanted to work for Jesus. Although I worked for a few other people beforehand. But I've always put the kingdom of God at the heart of my life. It may only have been just over 20 years ago that I went into church planting, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And when I think back, that meeting and the work of W.F.P. Burton challenged me so much. I bought a book that day from that missionary, and seriously, it has never ever left my side. It's been a brilliant support to me. So this is pretty much a definitive contribution to the history of W.F.P. Burton, one of the great African missionaries of the 20th century, a man who has really, really impacted a nation which is still feeling the ripples today. So that was the third one that I picked up. And then quite recently, I was searching the internet for something fresh that was academic on the voice of God, hearing God's voice, how we do that in the 21st century. And I wasn't finding anything that rang my bell. I couldn't just find the book I was looking for. And hey presto, Brill sent me another voucher. And with it, I bought a book by Tanya Harris called Hearing God's Voice, Towards a Theology of Contemporary Pentecostal Revelatory Experience, which is a bit of a mouthful, but I have to say this book is refreshing. It's not spooky, weird, or in any way inappropriate. It's very biblical. It's very accessible. It's also academic. Like the rest of these books, great, big, huge bibliography at the back. It's got a really good footnotes. The layout is excellent. This is a great book. So I'm halfway into this book, and I thought to myself, there's something about what's on this page that I'm sure my youngest daughter and I had talked about recently. And lo and behold, she's just been having a series of lectures from this person because she's doing her Masters in Theology at the moment. So the penny dropped that I've just bought the book of her teacher. So there you have it. Now, what am I saying about this series? Subject matters are very, very deliberately diverse in this series. I can't swear to this, but I would suggest to you the majority of these read like modified dissertations. So they're written at a high level. They are really excellent products as a whole. I've only read 4, but I mean, this one is volume 47, and it's a recent volume. So let's say there may be roughly 50 volumes in this series. It's not a series to be ignored because of the amount of academic work that's gone into these volumes. But I would have to say, whether you're reading history, Cecil Polhill, W.F.P. Burton, whether you're looking for an insight into the voice of God, or whether you are looking for any particular type of example of the academic application of experience in the Word of God, then these are books that are well worth considering. Now, if you're put off by anything that's got the word Pentecostal or Charismatic in the title, don't worry, we'll do something different next week. But seriously, I am absolutely thrilled with what is happening in the global south. You know, in England, in Europe, even in the USA now, the church is overall not doing too well, but the Pentecostals, the Charismatics are in growth. Here in 2024, we just had word that the world population since 2000 has increased by 1%. The percentage of the population that are Christian has increased by 2%. The percentage of Pentecostal charismatic Christians has grown by 4%. And so ultimately, the church is growing very, very well. It's just growing in the South, in South America, in Africa, where the church is growing at a phenomenal rate of knots. And to look back on some of this work and see how England had a massive impact into the start of that, and of course the USA too, how the missionaries that we sent out had a big impact, then I think it's really good to just have these on the bookshelf and consider them from time to time. I am certainly enthused with these 4 volumes, and when something else comes up, I will delve in again. But one thing that I would say, if you don't learn anything else out of today, then do learn that ticking the box on emails to say that you do want to be advised of promotions can make 30% the difference to the cost of a book that you may be buying. And I would suggest to you that's good advice wherever you get it from. So I hope that's helped you. If it has, please give us a big thumbs up on YouTube. Please remember to subscribe and to tell your friends about the channel. We're going for 1,000 now. We're very, very close, and it would be lovely if we could get there by Easter. And so if you will do that for me, I would really appreciate that. And until I see you next time, God bless and bye.